P1. The courtroom held an unsettling stillness as 5-year-old Emma Carter made her entrance. The imposing wooden doors loomed as her small hand gripped the leash of Rex, a German. The shepherd bore a long jagged scar that traced along his side, capturing the attention of every eye in the room. A young girl approached the witness stand, her steps cautious yet determined. The resolute Judge Mark Sullivan, a man of considerable legal experience, leaned forward slightly. With a careful eye, he regarded the child, aware that the burden of the case rested on her delicate shoulders. Emma stood as the only witness to an attempted abduction, a situation where one could potentially confine a perilous individual to prison for life. Yet there was one issue. Emma had not uttered a single word since In the midst of the courtroom drama, Ethan Hale occupied the defense table, his expression revealing a complex mix of emotions, crafted even with a hint of arrogance. A 45-year-old software engineer with a modest demeanor had emerged. He was taken into custody following an eyewitness account that positioned him at the location of Emma's attempted abduction. However, his defense was robust. Tangible proof, no admission of guilt, and a witness rendered mute by the prior actions of his attorney, who had already devised a plan that relied on undermining the traumatized child's capacity for recognition. But then an unexpected event unfolded as Emma made herself comfortable on the witness chair, her green eyes locked onto Ethan Hale's, her small fingers quivering as they executed a delicate motion, scarcely perceptible to those lacking keen observation. It was the quiet cue she had grasped through weeks of therapy, just two souls present in the space. Rex caught it, and Judge Sullivan's reaction was immediate. The instant Emma's fingers twitched in a silent plea for assistance, the dog's body stiffened. His ears perked up attentively. His muscles coiled like a loaded spring, a low, guttural growl rumbling from deep within. Deep within his chest, a sound of warning echoed, a signal of recognition as his golden brown eyes locked onto the source. Onto Hale, relentless and sharp. The response stirred a wave of discomfort throughout. In the courtroom, a murmur spread through the spectators, whispers of suspense filling the air. As the sound of the cicadas filled the air, something about the dog's behavior resonated deeply. It wasn't merely a well-trained support animal responding to its handler's distress. This was something more profound. With a primal intensity, Judge Sullivan's hand descended forcefully onto the gavel, producing a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom, resounding like a clap of thunder throughout the chamber. "This court will now adjourn for a 15-minute recess," he announced with an unusually urgent tone as the process secutor, Jenna Collins, took aim. She gave him a questioning look, but he avoided her gaze. Instead, he glanced at Emma, clung to Rex as if he were her only source of hope, as if something profound had just occurred, and he required a clear understanding of what it entailed before the trial moved forward. As the courtroom gradually emptied, Sullivan stayed in his seat, lost in thought. In his years on the bench, he had witnessed many things in racing, but never had a therapy dog responded with such undeniable intensity. What had Rex come to recognize, and perhaps more crucially, what did it mean? That signifies that, in the hallway, Emma knelt beside Rex, her small frame poised with intent. With her hands clutching the fur tightly, her mother, Sophia Carter, leaned down beside her. Smoothing back the child's curly hair with trembling fingers, she asked softly, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" whispered Emma, remaining silent. She didn't need to say anything, her grip on Rex drew her petite figure closer, leaning into his side. Jack Monroe, the lead, the investigator on the case, observed from a short distance, a seasoned FBI agent with decades of experience. Monroe possessed an instinct that had proven invaluable throughout the years, and at this moment, that instinct was speaking to him. What just unfolded in that courtroom was truly transformative. As he moved closer to the judge, Sullivan seemed unsettled, murmuring in a low voice, "I'd bet my badge he recognizes Hales from somewhere." Sullivan exhaled slowly, with sharp blue eyes narrowing. "We must uncover the truth." Meanwhile, within the defenses, in a secluded room, Ethan Hale faced his attorney, Michael Graves. The moment they were alone, the smug confidence on Hale's face twisted into something else. Something Colder, his fingers drummed against the table as he replayed the moment in his mind. The girl hadn't spoken, but the dog had reacted. She knows, he muttered under his breath, Graves raised. An eyebrow raised, a hint of a smile emerged, though no words were spoken. His thoughts were elsewhere, already racing that damn dog. He hadn't thought the creature would pose an issue, but now he understood that Rex could hold the answer to uncovering it all as the 15-minute recess approached its conclusion. Judge Sullivan adjusted his robes and inhaled deeply, despite his skepticism. Coincidences unfolded, and at that moment, an instinct whispered to him that Rex had just provided them with the crucial hint of the trial. It was time to delve further, and for the first time since the case began, he sensed the tide turning in the stillness before the courtroom. Before the darkness that silenced her, Emma Carter was a lively conversationalist. At the age of 5, she was the type of girl who illuminated a room with endless tales, her bright blue eyes sparkling with curiosity and mischief. Cherished enchanting tales, cuddly companions, and the soothing cadence of her mother's bedtime storytelling. With distinct voices for every character, she had never experienced fear until that fateful afternoon. It had been a perfect spring day, the kind where the scent of blooming petals floated gently on the breeze, while the sun cast its warm, golden hues across the. Sophia Carter observed her daughter from the kitchen window, a smile playing at the edges of her mouth. As Emma twirled in the yard, her pink dress flared out like a dancer's, captivating the moment with grace. Carter was expected home in a few hours, and she found herself pondering whether to begin dinner or hold off for his arrival. It should have been a simple decision. It was just another ordinary afternoon, a time that should have felt safe at 3:42 p.m. Sophia's phone rang. It was her sister reaching out from afar, and she entered the room, expecting just a brief moment. It took just 4 minutes of conversation when she came back to the yard. A jar stood at the gate, and a wave of cold terror shot through her veins. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the space where her daughter had been. Emma was still present, but she was not alone. A dark figure lingered nearby. A van sat quietly by the curb, its side door ajar, while a man knelt beside Emma. His smile was disconcertingly warm. "I have puppies in my van," he was. His voice, smooth and practiced, suggested something special. They needed a little girl to take care of them. "Would you like to see?" Sophia's world appeared to decelerate, her instincts wailing before her mind could fully grasp the unfolding events. Her voice cut through the air, and Emma noticed the man's head snap up, his smile brightening, disappeared, supplanted by a presence that was keen and methodical. In a heartbeat, he seized. Emma's arm went still. She froze, not a scream escaping her lips, nor did she put up a fight. She simply stared. She stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes, as though a profound, ingrained fear had ensnared her. Across the street, Martha Jenkins, a retired nurse, was walking her terrier when she noticed. Everything unfolded, her voice weathered with age, yet resonating with unwavering conviction. "Out. Hey, get away from that child." The man hesitated, his grip loosening for a moment. In the blink of an eye, Emma yanked her arm free and rushed toward her mother. Sophia embraced her daughter just as the engine of the van roared while the tires screamed in protest, gripping the pavement as the vehicle surged forward, leaving behind dark streaks. As the rubber met the road, Sophia held Emma close, her heart racing wildly. Her ribs, yet Emma remained silent. She uttered not a single word, choosing instead to bury her face into. She leaned against her mother's shoulder, trembling, as the police arrived within minutes. Detective Jack Monroe, a seasoned investigator, stepped forward. An investigator from the FBI's Child Abduction Task Force acted swiftly. The mastery of the moment. His silvering hair and piercing brown eyes revealed a lifetime of experience. He devoted his time to pursuing elusive figures, seeking out lost children who frequently remained untraceable. The cycle was one he had encountered previously. "Countless occasions, he matches the description," Monroe murmured, rifling through a tattered. "For children have vanished in the past 18 months, all having been approached near their residences, all enticed by the allure of puppies." His associate, Agent Lisa Grant, She knelt beside Emma, her voice a blend of tenderness and strength. "Sweetheart, do you remember what the man appeared as if he embodied silence, while Sophia gently swept Emma's hair back with her hands. "It's all right, dear. You're safe now. Can you describe to the kind officer what he looked like?" Emma's tiny hands trembled, clutched her mother's sweater firmly, yet remained silent, neither speaking nor nodding. She remained still, as if a switch had been flipped, silencing her voice completely. Utterly silent, she hasn't uttered a single word since I picked her up. Sophia whispered, her voice laced with fear. Her voice was laced with hesitation, and she remained silent. Agent Grant shared a glance with Monroe's selective mutism. She whispered, "A haunting trauma." Monroe let out a sigh, rubbing his temple, as he remained silent, lacking a response. The description is quite vague. A man and a black Veneti's open to interpretation. Anyone, Martha Jenkins, who had witnessed the abduction attempt, stepped forward. She stated firmly that she got part of the license plate, specifically the first 3 letters, Y. KZ Monroe's attention shifted sharply to her, as Sophia continued to hold onto Emma tightly. Experienced an overwhelming sense of despair, her daughter, once vibrant and full of energy, had withdrew into her own thoughts, and in the days that came after, it only deepened for Emma. She ceased playing, she ceased drawing, she declined to leave the house, recoiling at the sight of passing cars kept her awake, and when she finally drifted off, her nights were haunted by unspoken terrors, her petite frame convulsing against unseen dangers. Her screams never emerged, only gasps of terror that roused her parents in the dead of night. During the night, Sophia and David explored every possibility, sharing their favorite foods and weaving stories together. Cherished plush bunny, nothing seemed to help the little one they recognized was drifting away. In the dim light of the evening, Sophia found herself seated across from David at the kitchen table, her gaze fixed intently on him. Drained from fatigue, the therapist softly suggested a support animal. Therapy dog David ran a weary hand through his hair. "Do you really think that'll help?" Sophia confessed her uncertainty, yet she was open to exploring any possibility. As neither of them had the answers, understood the profound impact that choice would have, as Emma had experienced a significant loss. Her voice lingered, a whisper in the air, reaching out to someone who could still hear her. And his name was Rex. The atmosphere within Dr. Laura Bennett's Animal Rehabilitation Center was heavy with the aroma of antiseptic mingled with the rich, earthy musk of fur, enveloping the quiet room. Save for the steady tick of the clock mingles with the soft scratch of claws on the tiled floor. Beside a spacious orthopedic bed, by the window, a German shepherd rested quietly, his deep brown eyes observing everything with keen attention. With a subtle yet powerful presence, he was known as Rex, a name he once held. Has served as one of the most exceptional canine officers in the city's police force, a canine whose instincts and training had saved lives, yet now he carried the scars of offering one notably sharp line etched along his right side, a lasting recollection of the evening that concluded his professional journey 3 years prior. Amidst a raid 2, Rex charged at the armed suspect in a daring attempt to save the kidnapped child. With a moment of uncertainty, the man lunged at him, wielding a knife intended for an officer. Cutting deep into his flesh, Rex had subdued the suspect, even as blood darkened his fur. But in the months that followed, the injury lingered, never truly mending, impacting his mobility, and the department, facing financial constraints, made the tough choice to let him go. Was put on a euthanasia list, considered unfit for service, prior to Laura's intervention. Dr. Bennett had dedicated years to the therapy animal program, focusing on instances where animals could assist in healing trauma. Survivors. When she learned about Rex's situation, she was determined to adopt him, believing that her keen intellect and steadfast devotion still held significance. And now she was on the brink of putting that to the test. Sophia Carter sat anxiously in a chair, her fingers tightly clutching the fabric of. Emma stood behind her mother, peeking out from behind her shoulder, her skirt swaying gently. A young girl had remained silent since the event 2 weeks prior, and despite her participation in therapy, no progress had been made. With a soft touch, Lauren knelt down to Emma's level, her voice tender as she greeted, "Hi, Emma. My name is Laura, and I work with extraordinary dogs that assist children who..." She had faced terrifying experiences, yet Emma remained silent, her green eyes revealing nothing. Flickering to the large German shepherd a few feet away, Rex sat patiently, his ears perked forward, yet he remained still, observing her intently. Her presence was calm and reassuring. "Would you like to meet him?" Laura inquired, but the little girl remained silent. Answer, but she didn't run either. That was a start. Sophia smoothed her. "My daughter's hair is lovely, and he's such a sweet dog. He used to serve as a police dog, just like the ones in the tales you read." Laura gestured to Rex and offered a soft. The command to stay was given, yet the German shepherd did not comply. Laura glanced back at Emma, saying, "You don't need to get too close if you don't want to. Rex will remain right here, but if you feel prepared, you can extend your hand, and he will approach you." Emma paused for what felt like an eternity, remaining still. Staying still for a moment, she gradually emerged from behind her mother, taking careful steps forward. A small hand rose, cautious yet purposeful, while Rex stayed motionless, anticipating what would come next. The final cue arrived as Laura nodded. He gradually lowered his head and took a. With each careful step forward, another follows, and yet another. The instant his warm breath brushed against Emma's palm, a subtle change occurred. Her fingers curled gently. As she brushed through the dog's thick fur, a connection sparked, and Sophia gasped in surprise. Gently covering her mouth with her hand, it was the first moment Emma had dared to extend her reach to anything or anyone since the attack. Tears filled her eyes as she softly murmured, "Oh darling." Emma's tiny fingers nestled further into Rex's fur, holding on tightly, him as though he were the sole anchor in a world that had become alarmingly unpredictable. Laura smiled. "That's a good girl. Emma, Rex likes you." The child said nothing, but she. Over the following weeks, Rex and Emma grew inseparable. At home, she would sit. For hours, she sat beside him, her small hands gently following the scar that marked his side. Nightmares jolted her awake in the dead of night, but it was Rex's steady heartbeat that soothed her fears. Though she still refused to speak, she began drawing again with simple crayons. An image of a girl and a dog standing side by side, silhouetted against ominous shadowy figures. In the afternoon, as Emma sat on the floor of Laura's office, she observed Rex as he performed a straightforward method when something extraordinary occurred. "Well done" to her. Whispered, the words floated gently in the air, so delicate that for a fleeting moment, Sophia believed she had conjured them. Yet, as she turned, she saw Emma gazing at Rex, her lips slightly parted in awe, as if she too. Sophia was taken aback as tears welled up in her eyes. It may not have been significant, but it marked the beginning. Laura softly rested her hand on Sophia's arm as she murmured that sometimes, trust is the initial step toward rediscovering your voice. Sophia tightened her grip, and together they would venture wherever that trust guided them, certain it would take them to a meaningful destination. They never anticipated entering a courtroom where a monster would ultimately be revealed. The atmosphere within the courtroom was heavy with anticipation, and every seat in the gallery was occupied, as families of journalists and legal observers looked on with eager anticipation. One of the most high-profile trials unfolded. In the recent past, an event was on the verge of commencing in the heart of the room, where the defendant, Ethan Hale, occupied a seat next to his. The attorney's expression remained inscrutable, even in light of the serious charges he faced. Eerily serene, his fingers drummed a steady beat on the smooth surface. At the defense table, sitting next to her mother, Emma Carter gripped the leash of Rex firmly, her tiny fingers encircling the sturdy fabric resembling a lifeline. The German shepherd remained vigilant beside her, his ears attentively perked forward, deep brown eyes occasionally fixated on Hale, his nose twitching as if there was something familiar in the air. "All rise," the BFF's voice rang out. As Judge Mark Sullivan entered the chamber, his robe billowed elegantly behind him. He settled into his seat at the elevated bench. His keen gaze swept across the room, pausing momentarily on Emma and Rex. He had previously issued a ruling permitting the therapy dog to be present, yet he understood that this decision was far from universally accepted. Before we proceed with opening statements, Sullivan remarked in his resonant voice, "The court will consider arguments concerning the presence of the support animal in these matters, with careful measurement and control in mind." Proceedings. Michael Graves, the defense attorney, rose smoothly from his seat and he adjusted his tie, "Your Honor," and began in a polite tone, but resolute, while we acknowledge the prosecution's perspective on emotional. The presence of this animal is significantly detrimental, particularly a large German Shepherd. The courtroom may stir an emotional reaction from the jury that could unfairly sway their judgment. Against my case, we kindly ask that the dog be removed during the testimony of Jenna Collins, the lead. The prosecutor rose promptly in response, "Your Honor, regarding Emma Carter's case, 5 years old and a survivor of trauma. She has been diagnosed with selective mutism as a result of her experiences. Rex is not present for entertainment. He serves as a vital support animal for medical needs. His presence enables Emma to engage in these proceedings with minimal discomfort." Judge Sullivan reclined in his. "The expression is unreadable. I have already gone through the documentation provided by the child." The psychologist and the animal behaviorist observe as the dog continues to evoke a soft murmur that spreads throughout the space. In the courtroom, some nodded in agreement while others muttered discontentedly under their breath. About Graves pressed his lips together in discontent, yet reluctant to continue the debate. He turned away to his seat, casting a fleeting look at Hale, who sat with an unsettlingly blank expression as the trial commenced. The prosecution presented a stark and unsettling portrayal of Hale's actions, a long-standing history of manipulation, deception, and predatory behavior. Among those summoned to testify was the elderly neighbor, Martha Jenkins, who vividly recounted the harrowing moment she witnessed. Hale attempted to entice Emma into his van, her voice quivering as she recounted how he had seized the child's arm. Before making her escape, Emma remained silent as she faced the situation, her petite figure overshadowed by the imposing wooden chair, her fingers occasionally. She tightened her grip on the leash, never releasing it even when the tension grew too much. How she would gaze down at Rex, who stayed completely motionless, his silence, presence anchoring her, and then it was time for her testimony. A silence enveloped in the courtroom as Emma was softly guided to the witness stand. Sophia Carter accompanied her with a steady presence. Her watchful eyes remained fixed on her daughter as she assisted Emma into the seat, then stepped back, though her every instinct was to stay close. Strength surged within her, fueled by the longing to gather her daughter close and whisk her away from this place. Jenna Collins approached with caution, her demeanor gentle, and, with a warm smile, she greeted Emma, saying, "I know this might feel a bit intimidating, but keep in mind that you're not obligated to speak if you don't wish to. A simple nod or shake of the head is perfectly acceptable if that feels more comfortable for you. At ease, and should you ever require a pause, feel free to inform us." Emma averted her eyes, her gaze elsewhere, was anchored to the table, her breath shallow, yet suddenly, as if attuned to her surroundings. Anxiety. Rex nudged his body gently against her leg as she bent down, and she slowly nodded, gripping a handful of his fur, and said softly, "Good, Jenna. Emma, could you share who was present with you in your yard that day?" She paused, her gaze fixed downward, but after a prolonged silence, she gradually lifted her arm and directed her finger straight at Richard. The defendant's expression remained unchanged, yet a flicker of something passed through him. With a fleeting, involuntary clench of his jaw, Graves stood up immediately. "Objection. The child has been repeatedly exposed to images of my client before the trial. This identification lacks reliability." As Judge Sullivan raised a hand and overruled the matter, "The jury will assess the reliability of the witness." As Jenna proceeded with what Emma had done, "This man said anything to you that day." The child remained silent. Instead, she created a delicate gesture with her hand, a quiet indication. It was the same signal she had previously. The German Shepherd reacted to what Rex comprehended. In an instant, his ears perked up, muscles coiling with tension as a deep, guttural growl escaped him. It emanated from deep within him, not with aggression, but as a cautionary signal. The response sent a jolt through the courtroom, causing Judge Sue to lean forward, his brow furrowed. Graves stood once more, his brow furrowed, urgency in his voice. "Your Honor, I object to this." It was dramatic, yet Sullivan seemed oblivious, his attention fixed on Rex. The dog had vanished. Completely motionless, his full attention fixed on Hale, as if he had detected a familiar scent. He could sense it was the identical response he experienced when Emma first laid eyes on Hale. In a moment of pure instinct, a thought flashed through Sullivan's mind, prompting him to turn to Jenna. "Miss Collins," he said, his voice carefully measured, "has this animal had any prior?" In the interaction with the defendant, Jenna hesitated. "To the best of my knowledge, Your Honor." Sullivan directed his gaze toward the defense table. "Mr. Hale, have you had any experience with this dog?" For the first time, Hale displayed genuine emotion. His fingers, which had been the gentle tapping, had transformed into a tight fist. He stayed still. Quietly, Jenna's eyes grew wide as a sudden understanding washed over her. She pivoted to her co-counsel, leaned in and murmured something swiftly. Moments later, a member of the prosecution team hurriedly exited the courtroom, leaving Graves bewildered. "What is going on?" he demanded, his patience wearing thin as he turned to Jenna. Her expression became unreadable as she addressed the court. "Your Honor, I request a short recess. New evidence might be pertinent to this case." Judge Sullivan examined her for a lengthy pause preceded the nodding, signaling a 15-minute recess as the courtroom gradually emptied, filled with murmurs. Speculation filled the air, spreading like wildfire. Had Rex just recognized Richard Hale, and if so, from where? Something informed Judge Sullivan that the answer to that, the question, loomed large, poised to alter the entire landscape. The burden of the case pressed heavily on the prosecution team as fresh developments emerged. It has come to light that Ethan Hale has been officially connected to several disappearances, but without Emma's complete involvement. The testimony during the trial hung in a delicate balance of doubt. Yet what no one anticipated was the solution to the mystery would not emerge from the child but from the German Shepherd. Remained steadfastly by her side. The morning air was refreshingly crisp as the prosecution team, under Jenna Call's leadership, presented their forthcoming motion for introduction. Recent forensic findings indicate that the soil samples discovered in Ethan Hale's van had been. The analysis revealed a highly specific location, one that is quite remote. An empty cabin nestled in the northern woods, Detective Jack Monroe had been working on. For decades, similar cases have indicated what this could signify. "Your Honor," as Collins addressed, "Your Honor, we respectfully request a 24-hour recess to pursue an important lead that has come to our attention. This evidence may very well provide the crucial element needed to resolve this case." Michael Graves' defense attorney promptly interjected, "Your Honor, this is nothing more than a mere delay strategy. My client has already undergone extensive. There are doubts, and the evidence linking him to the alleged cabin is tenuous at best. The soil samples are merely circumstantial." Judge Sullivan's stern gaze silenced Graves as he granted the motion he ruled on. "The prosecution has 24 hours. Court was adjourned immediately after the judge's gavel struck. Monroe and his team activated Rex Emma's vigilant presence. The Guardian was included in the mission, and his response to the Hale was unmistakable. Perhaps he could perceive something that human eyes had overlooked. The search team arrived at the desolate. By early afternoon, the cabin stood in an unsettling silence, the surrounding trees looming like silent sentinels. Softly carried by the breeze, a heavy veil of dust enveloped the porch, though barely perceptible. Footprints leading toward the back door hinted at recent activity. Rex was the. Immediately upon nearing the cabin, the dog's ears stood alert, and his nose twitched with curiosity. Twitching with sharp intensity, his body stiffened, tail erect, muscles poised like a coiled spring. In the spring, he emitted a low growl, pacing restlessly at the threshold. "This place is wrong, Monroe," he murmured. Rex whispered, sensing something amiss. The team advanced carefully, weapons at the ready. Within the cabin, the furnishings were minimal: a table, a cot, and an empty food can neatly stacked in a corner. However, Monroe observed something unusual about the wooden floor at the rear. The wall bore an odd seam, a subtle indentation that felt distinctly out of place. Rapped on it, producing a hollow sound. There's something beneath this surface. With swift precision, the officers pried the boards loose to reveal what lay beneath. A narrow staircase spiraled down into a hidden basement, sending a shiver down their spines as the air grew cold and damp as they descended, the dim light revealing a chilling scene of children's possessions, vintage playthings, tiny footwear, a worn pink backpack, and tucked away in the most distant corner, a girl named Emma Sullivan, just 8 years old, had been missing. Yet she remained alive despite being chained. For 6 months, her complexion was ashen, her garments tattered, yet the instant she laid eyes on the officers, her eyes brimming with tears of recognition and relief, whispered for help. Her voice hoarse. From neglect, Rex responded instantly, pulling at his leash and whimpering as, upon sensing the suffering this child had endured, Monroe rushed forward, unlocking. The chains lifted Emma into his embrace. "You're safe now," he assured her. "We've got this." Emma clung to him, her delicate frame quivering. The search had finally reached its conclusion. An end, but the nightmare lingered on. Back at the courthouse, the news of Emma's rescue ignited excitement. The gallery buzzed with anticipation as Collins readied for the decisive moment. In opposition to the hail, the judge permitted the introduction of Emma's discovery as evidence. In conjunction with the soil sample that connected the cabin to his vehicle, Mr. Hale Collins addressed the defendant, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "How do you account for the presence of an abducted child confined in the basement on a?" For the first time, property was directly tied to you. Ethan Hale appeared visibly shaken. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. Jenna Collins pressed forward. Her tone remained steady. "Your DNA was discovered on the chains, and the tires of your vehicle correspond to the evidence. Footprints lead away from the cabin, and most crucially, Emma Sullivan is still alive, implying she holds the power to speak against you." The gravity of those words hung heavily in the air. In the courtroom, a solitary survivor represented a witness capable of single-handedly unraveling his defense. Meticulously crafted by Hale, the facade of calm started to disintegrate as his lawyer hissed urgent words in his ear. But it was evident he was trapped, and once more, Rex, resting at Emma's feet, abruptly raised his head. His eyes narrowed at the hail, his hackles rising as a deep growl vibrated through him. The room fell into a hush as the German shepherd moved with measured, purposeful strides, his gaze fixed intently on the defendant, conveying a sense of recognition surged as everyone flinched at the sight of the man who had upheld his arrogance all along. Trial was now clearly perspiring, his hands clutching the edge of the table as he turned to his attorney, whispering something in a hurried manner, then speaking in a voice that was scarcely audible. A whisper escaped his lips. "I want to change my plea." Gasps filled the room as the judge looked on. Sullivan's expression grew somber. "Mr. Hale, are you indicating that you wish to enter a plea of guilty?" The room held its collective breath, a shaky exhale escaping as the trial's abruptness lingered in the air. The end sent shock waves throughout the nation as Ethan Hale received his sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. His conviction marking the end for a man who had instilled fear in others, families for years, yet the real champions of the case extended beyond just the lawyers or the. It was a brave 5-year-old girl who discovered her inner strength, accompanied by a loyal dog. In the days following the sentencing, she never lost hope. It was then that Emma finally spoke her first words. In the weeks that followed, she cradled Rex's face in her delicate hands and whispered her gratitude. Her parents wept, realizing that their daughter was finally discovering her path, returning to them, and as Rex wagged his tail, nuzzling her gently, it became evident that certain connections were unyielding. Regardless of how shadowy the world turned, there would forever be those ready to confront the shadows, even if they moved on all fours. Stay tuned for the next chapter in this gripping story, where new twists unravel and secrets are revealed that could change everything. What happens next could be the key to solving the case, and you won't want to miss it.